Dearly beloved, and those that just came for the food, whether you know someone that has passed on or am currently a ghost and have somehow found your way in here, don't worry, we'll be cool if you are. One thing we can agree on, corporeal or not, eulogies are hard to write. Humans live a long time compared to most animals and some irritating fly species, which I guess kind of works out because they suck. So like, nature follows open mic rules. If you're going to be a pest, you get less time at the mic. And to honor a human life takes care and knowledge, and how the fuck are you supposed to know everything they did? Like, you want to hit up the accomplishments, that's kind of the point. Be a bit gnar if you didn't. Like, if instead the eulogy was just the dumb shit that they did in their life, like, Mary was a wonderful woman, except for that time she totally ghosted a wedding, didn't throw her card down to cover her part of the check, forgot to return my Tupperware and added me to a group text chain of 90% of the people on I didn't know, and then I had to silence the thread because my phone was vibrating like it was trying to come to life, and then I forgot what the fuck the thread was about, so I had to scroll a Bible's worth of history back to find out the fucking reason this whole fucking thing started, and whilst doing so I stepped in a puddle and then my sock was wet. Anyway, that was Mary, blessed be her memory. If you want to aim for the good stuff, that's the point. But when a eulogy opportunity is presented, you can't possibly know everything cool and groovy a person did. Like, what if they were super good at frying an egg? Like, what if they always nailed a 100-target whole skee ball? What if they were, like, really good at shits? Like, never strained, never grunted, just in and out like a professional, no evidence left behind. Can't really know everything good a human does. So you just got to go with the big moves, which is only a fraction of the good stuff that a human can do. So really, the eulogy itself is not a complete honorarium. It is a BuzzFeed list of accomplishments. And I'm the guy that stays through the credits at the end of the movie because I want to honor the whole thing, man. Love a lot of moving pieces. And there's a lot of moving pieces in a movie, and there's a lot of tiny victories in life. I feel it should be honored or you're not getting the full story. But that's hard to do. Eulogies are hard to write. It is odd that a eulogy is hard to write. You'd think after all this time of humans dying and others having to honor them, it would get easier. It has been a human tradition that goes back a ways, probably forever, since the first caveman was like, ah, shit, Nog is not moving anymore. That sucks. And then the rest of the cave pod was like, do we just like leave him there or eat him or what's the deal here? And yay, some other cave person came down the hill or whatever and said, yeah, don't eat him. Let's not do that. Last time we got real sick. Let's bury him in the ground because like big animals are probably going to want a piece of him. We don't need that drama in the community right now. And then they buried Nog. And while doing it, another cave person was like, man, I'm fucking bummed. Someone say something nice. And those that knew Nog best were like, yeah, that's a Jim Dandy idea. Let's do this every time one of us stops moving and break the tension. It sweetens the deal, you know? And that cave person was like, Nog was a good guy, whatever. And another cave person was like, yeah, but also he was good at blank. And then another one was like, yeah, actually, don't forget that one time, yada, yada. Eventually, they all realized it was difficult to summarize a life, and that's how it went down or whatever. I don't know. I'm winging it here. Like I said, eulogies are hard. And they are especially hard when the human you are honoring in words did so much for so long, makes it a pain in the fucking ass. Because like you got to make sure you mention all the good stuff they did, and if you forget anything, someone's going to raise their hand and, well, actually you, which is pissy, and now the mood is ruined. So keep it tight, humans. Live a life that fits into a 10-minute summary. Make it easy on us that survived you to eulogize you, okay? We have shit to do. Unfortunately, though, we are here to eulogize a human that lived so long and did so much, there's just no way we can fit it all into a single eulogy, which is already hard to do. So bear with me a moment, for a moment is all we have, as we honor the great and wonderful Norman Milton Lear. Now, Norman Milton Lear is a name that probably doesn't ring a lot of bells with anyone not part of the original sandwich generations. That's the fancy flavor of generational living that originally referred to a generation of women having to care for kids and parents, hence the sandwich term. And it is not as tasty as it sounds, but it's probably as expensive as a good one, which it should not be. Sandwiches should not be expensive. That is a flaw in society. And yeah, it's more and more common these days, but the sandwich generation phenomenon was recognized in the late 20th century as changes in lifespan and later age for childbearing meant that mothers often had small children and older parents at the same time. So those that were part of the first round to experience this definitely have heard and have been directly affected by the work of Norman Lear. born in 1922 in New Haven, Connecticut, went to high school in New York and then Connecticut because they moved, and then 1940 goes to Emerson College in Boston. This guy's more East Coast than a bagel and a bowl of clam chowder. 1942, Norman Lear drops out of college and joins the Air Force, where he flew 52 combat missions as a radio operator gunner on a B-17 bomber, honored with an Air Medal and 4 oak leaf clusters, basically because he was a badass and he lived, which is a perfect score and victory points for you completionists in the room of the Air Force in World War II. Norman comes back home, starts a PR career, inspired by his Uncle Jack. Quote, "My dad had a brother, Jack, who flipped me a quarter every time he saw me. He was a press agent, so I wanted to be a press agent. That's the only role model I had. So all I wanted was to grow up to be a guy who could flip a quarter to his nephew." He moved to California, where he actually got to see Charlie Chaplin perform on stage once. That's for context, in case you're lost in the multiverse right now, wondering in what time period we are in. Norman teams up with his cousin Elaine's husband, Ed Simmons, and starts a door-to-door sales business before realizing it was way more fun to write comedy sketches. And they were hired to write for Martin and Lewis. That's Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, for anyone needing directions here. And Rowan and Martin. That's Dan Rowan and Dick Martin. Their show is called Laugh-In. Stay with me. If you can follow Vanderpump Rules, you can follow this. Norman gets hired in the 70s to direct 2 films starring Dick Van Dyke. And during that time, he tried selling a comedy series about a blue-collar sandwich generational family loosely based on his own dad and mom, and directly based on an old British sitcom called Till Death Do Us Part. That show gets picked up by CBS, and All in the Family airs in 1971. You can give it up for All in the Family. It's one of the greatest shows of all time. If there is a twitch, somebody started singing the theme song, and that warmed my heart a little bit. If there is a twitch in your brain chemistry from that name, it's because it is considered one of the greatest TV shows of all time. After that, Norman Lear is inspired by another British sitcom called Steptoe and Son, about a London junk dealer living with his son, changes the location to the Watts section of Los Angeles, and in 1972, Sanford and Son airs. And then a whole bunch of spin-offs. Yeah, give it up for Sanford and Son, come on. And then a whole bunch of spin-offs, like something out of Sunday school lecture. And All in the Family begat Maude and the Jeffersons, and Maude begat Good Times. Then came Mary Hartman, which begat Fernwood Tonight, and so it was good. He also produced a little number called One Day at a Time in Different Strokes, all of which concerned American families sandwiched between generations, just trying to get by. All of which did what no other sitcoms at the time were doing, holding a mirror up to the world as it was, not coding it in escapism, but instead showing the culture the biting comedy that it is itself. Up until then, no one was touching race relations, classism, sexual orientation, Rob Reiner, all issues that the American public had to face, or it was going to suffocate inside of itself. His activism didn't start there, it just didn't stop at his shows. Norman Lear also started People for the American Way, and he even bought one of the only copies of the original Declaration of Independence, and he toured it all over the country. The man was as all-American as the club sandwich. So many things on top of each other trying to work together. He produced Fried Green Tomatoes, speaking of food, and most notably in this buffet of notoriety, was a driving force and an executive producer of The Princess Bride. He wrote for The Chappelle Show and South Park. Anything that was holding a mirror up to the many layers we are experiencing as a culture. He was a deli counter pantry chef of the metaphorical generational hot and cold meal compacted into something too big to eat in one bite. And much like that, there's just too much to talk about Norman Lear, who passed away on December 5th, 2023, at 101 years old. Anyway, I'm hungry. And there's no way we're going to finish this in one sitting. So take this home with you. Think for a minute about how much you do each day, good or bad, because that's your life. That's the whole hoagie that is, and will be you and your story. Don't be afraid to hold the mirror up to yourself and see all of your toppings and fillings, your bits and breads, because that's what makes you interesting and delicious and complicated. May your story be a sandwich. May you live it honestly. And when we all live lives big enough and long enough to be too much to be remembered in a moment. So raise your glasses to Norman Lear. May we all make it hard to write a eulogy about us when our story is done. I love you. Good night.